Religious books are actually veiled in symbolism and they're written as metaphors and allegory. The way that people are interpreting religious books today is indicative that we just came out of Kali Yuga. If you're wondering what Kali Yuga is, it's basically an age, and there are 4 ages, and it's the darkest night of the soul, or the time period when people are the most ignorant. People in the Kali Yuga don't really communicate well, and when you say something, someone might actually misunderstand you. They're going to project their own ideas on what you say. We are 300 years into Dwapara Yuga, approximately, and we are not in Kali Yuga anymore. In the Vedas, it states that doing the Hare Krishna chant will get you to illumination and will get you to enlightenment. But we aren't in the Kali Yuga anymore. So things are changing. So in the Kali Yuga, the path to God is devotion. It's a type of religion or a type of spiritual practice, is to be devoted to a specific God. And that was all you needed in the Kali Yuga. So primarily we had a masculine God since we've written things down. If you want to learn more about that, read the alphabet versus the goddess. So what this particular book is about is how the inception of language was when patriarchy took over. Why is this relevant? Well, because in Satya Yuga, which is the golden age, around the clock of time, the Ouroboros that eats its tail, the clock of time goes in a circle. We don't have the end of time. What is basically going on is when we are furthest away from this particular point in the galaxy, we become unilluminated, we become ignorant, and we get further away from God and source. And people need more language, so language increases, and that's why suddenly, out of nowhere, we started having language all over the world. It's because we started to decline into a lower yuga. In the Middle Ages, this was the bottom of the barrel point in Kali Yuga, and now we're on our way back up into Dwapara Yuga, which is also referred to as the electric age, because this is when just huge amounts of innovation happen. Electricity is discovered and we learn how to harness electricity. In that yuga, Christ is the way, right? So we have all these Christ type figures. There's a story about Krishna. That is the beginning of the Kali Yuga. And Krishna is, again, another Christ deity. Because bhakti yoga, or devotional spirituality, is the key to enlightenment in Kali Yuga. That was the key throughout that age. But we are now in another age. And I think that you will notice that what is starting to happen is the reconnection with the divine feminine. So goddess religions will just continue to thrive, and equality will continue to happen, and women will become more powerful as they were prior to the alphabet's creation, prior to language, when people were telepathic in the Satya Yuga. So no longer, and I know this is offensive to people and I don't mean it that way, but no longer is devotion to Christ, or particularly devotion to that deity, no longer is that the way to enlightenment. Another thing that's happening is all of the secrets, because that is the exoteric version of that myth. There is an esoteric version of that myth. So the Jesus story is not just a literal story about a guy who died on a cross. It's actually symbolic of this physiological process that Jacob's ladder is indicative of, because you climb 33 rungs of the ladder to get to heaven. In Kundalini awakening, which is the awakening of Christ consciousness, which is the real true story of Jesus, although people needed a very surface level understanding, an exoteric version, when people were ignorant and could not grasp these concepts because we were furthest away from that point in the galaxy. Because that's no longer the case, people are starting to find out about the truth. And if you are a seeker, no matter what yuga you're in, you can find the answer. That is the meaning of seek and you will find. If you spend enough time looking for something, you will find it. we needed a lot of that wisdom before to get through life, and it was veiled, it was very vague, and you were just expected to follow it and trust because no one really understood why people were doing the things they were doing. But now we're coming into the truth and we're starting to understand what those 33 rungs are. The 33 years of Jesus until he died on the cross. That is symbolic of dying on the cross to your material old self, because in order to be reborn in Christ, you need to activate your third eye and you need to activate your crown chakra. Activating these 2 points when you're meditating, when you have an awakening through various methods, will illuminate you to Christ consciousness, and you will essentially wake up to the truth. So having an illuminating awakening is way more possible now that we have a huge amount of people coming out and revealing a lot of these teachings for what they are. That used to get you killed, so a lot of the secret organizations that held that knowledge had to be extremely careful, because look at what happened to the Templars when they were found out. They got super persecuted, and that's what happened to witches, because witches were just women that were labeled witches as a derogatory term when really they were probably just practicing natural medicine, or even if they were like practicing spiritual things, those things were remnants of the Satya Yuga or the other yugas prior to Kali Yuga. So we've had these like sprinklings of this knowledge around the world, but you were always persecuted if you came out and people found out about you, because they just like didn't have the ears to hear and didn't have the eyes to see. So I think this is just so interesting that now we're seeing the age of the goddess. We're seeing the feminine, the divine feminine come out. And it doesn't mean it will be the end of Christianity, but hopefully there will be a lot more people coming into the truth about what these veiled and coded books mean. And if you are searching and you landed on this video, then you probably saved yourself like 20 years of searching because you were just ready for it. Your soul was just ready for it. So I just thought that was something to share, because it's not the end of the world. We're actually just moving up higher than Dwapara Yuga. They will get better, but they're not going to get better right away. There are growing pains. So we still have a lot of work, and we're still 2 ages away from the golden era, and we won't see it in our lifetimes. We're just moving closer. And after around 2028, we'll like start to see a lot more evidence that people are evolving, people are awakening, and people will have like way more downloads, because we're coming closer to that point in the galaxy that has a connection with our ability to feel the divine. Because in Kali Yuga, you don't feel the divine, you have faith and you trust, but you don't feel it unless you've had a Kundalini awakening, and that's like who saints are and people who are gurus. But in this time, in Dwapara Yuga, we're moving closer to that, and we will be able to feel it more and more as the time passes until we move into the Treta and the Satya Yuga.